everyone. I'm Clarissa. I'm from Ontario. I'm a mom of two and a couples therapist and a psychologist. And so what I normally focus on in terms of the clinical side is working with couples, specifically couples with young kids and people who are planning to grow their families. And then I also work with individuals who are trying to conceive, experiencing pregnancy loss and postpartum mood issues. Part of reaching out to James and having these conversations is that I have a really big heart for marriage ministries as well as supporting pastors, because I know growing up in a family with my dad being a pastor and my mom being a psychologist, I saw there was a lot of need. So yeah, I'm so thankful that he invited me over to have these conversations.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that a little bit. But I wanted you to maybe go into more detail about that. Like, what was it like growing up with a pastor as a dad and then mother as a psychologist?
Yeah, I think for me, it was really neat to see them working as a dream team. I felt like seeing my mom being so attuned to the needs of the church, that was really neat, that she plays this role of being a helper. And my dad is a very gifted preacher and he's really, really good at teaching. And so I think the areas that he may need help with, my mom was that complementary helper. It's really neat to see them brainstorm together ministries to start or areas of the needs of the church and the community. So that was really wonderful to see. I think another perk of being a pastor's child is that you get to ask questions about the Bible anytime. You don't have to wait till Sunday to go to your pastor. And then you get emotional support from your psychologist mom. So that was a really great combo for me.
Did your dad see your mom for therapy or how did
Well, I mean, I think ethically, I don't think that's allowed, but
yeah.
She certainly gave him a lot of encouragement. As a pastor, you get a lot of love from church members, but you also get a lot of feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think she was always really encouraging and helping him expand in areas that, to encourage him, to help him dream and to vision together and really pursue God's calling. And even during their earlier years, I think they took turns studying in the seminary. While my dad was studying, my mom would work to support the family. And then later on, my mom also went into seminary to study counseling. So even earlier on in their marriage, they were supporting each other. So to me, it was like a dream team. It was really neat to see. I mean, not a perfect, all relationships have areas to work on. So I don't want to paint this picture of everything was perfect. Yeah. But it was certainly really neat to see them collaborate.
Yeah. And did your dad see a different therapist then or?
Oh, that I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess
I've never asked.
Tell you as a daughter. I would be curious.
I've never asked though.
It's like you said your mom was a psychologist. How did you feel personally inspired to become a psychologist then?
I actually didn't want to be a psychologist. It was not my dream. My dream was actually just to be a mom. Not just, but it was to be a mom. That was my dream. Growing up, I had a lot of interest playing with kids, supporting other kids. And as I got older, I had even more interest helping with kids with special needs. So that's why I was looking through different programs and very last minute, randomly, but maybe not randomly because I know that's in God's plans, that I encountered this program called School and Clinical Child Psychology at the U of A. And so I went into that program just wanting to help kids. It wasn't anything that I wanted to be or license as. There wasn't any specific plans. It was just, I think, again, because I wanted to be a mom, in my mind, I thought, okay, even after a program, I learn about kids. If I never work a day, that's fine. Then I'll be more informed about children. Mm. So that was my initial intention. And then after entering to the program, they were giving us a talk about, this program will lead you to be a psychologist. I thought, what? I did not sign up for this. I didn't want to be a psychologist because that's what my mom was. And the backstory to that is because growing up, I think people thought that I was in psychology because of my mom. So I was sick and tired of hearing that narrative. And there's also a part of me, maybe this prideful part of me when I was a younger person that did not want my achievements to be dismissed. You're in this field because of your mom. Oh, you're good at this because of your mom. But I think God has helped me through those pieces to not feel that struggle. And so now I just embrace the fact that I am a child of a psychologist and really enjoying the work.
So you went to U of A to be a mom?
I went to U of A. Well, I went to U of A to learn more about children. And it was, like
Oh,
I said, I did enjoy working with kids with special needs, autistic children. That was a big passion of mine.
okay.
And I thought, oh, I mean, if I ever become a mom, that would be amazing to learn about kids. And if I ever have children with special needs, then I will be more than equipped to help them. So,
Yeah. Cool. So like through that upbringing, through going to school, but the whole time going to church, being a Christian, did you ever find that there were some tensions between kind of biblical teaching and then the teachings that you learned in school with psychology?
I think I actually saw more integration than tension. And I think it's probably because I have a more biased lens being a pastor's daughter and a psychologist's daughter. Like they talk a lot about how those two integrate together. So I see more the integration piece. But certainly there are some areas that I've noticed there may be some tension. So for example, the biblical view of human nature is sinful, and some psychological theories would talk about how humans by nature is good. So that will be some tension there. Another one is goal and life and purpose in life, where the Bible talks about pursuing holiness, furthering his kingdom. Certainly from some psychological perspective, they would talk about self-actualization or reaching your potentials or gaining autonomy, right? Like taking control over your life. So those perspectives would naturally have some clashing with biblical perspectives.
Yeah. I remember going to therapy and then them talking about compassion, forgiveness, compassion for yourself. And I always thought like, where does that come from? Like, what is the source of that? You know, for me, it's God. But then for them, I'm like, where does their source? Did you ever think about that?
Yeah, I think certainly that was for me when I work with clients, because I don't necessarily provide faith-based counseling. So I call myself a Christian psychologist, just as like if you were to go to a dentist, a Christian dentist, right? It's not like you're doing faith-based dental work, right? I mean, I really love that question because I do see it as a bit of a gap. So as a psychologist who doesn't provide faith-based counseling, I don't necessarily bring up God unless the client brings it up. Certainly during our intake session, I would usually ask them, like, what is your cultural background? What are your values? What are your worldviews? What is your faith background? Do you have a faith background? And so that's when I would ask them, like, where do you draw your strength from? Where do you draw your hope from? So a lot of times it's through their spiritual elements, or sometimes we talk about self-compassion. But that's the part that I find some people having a lot of trouble, because if they don't have a lot of compassion for themselves, it's hard to find a source of that. So sometimes it is through a relationship that I build with them. Like they see that I'm compassionate towards them, and so they learn to be some self-compassionate. But I mean, I ask myself too, like, where do my compassion come from, right? It comes from God. Like, it really truly isn't from me. In fact, growing up, I had a very strong self-critic. I was really harsh towards myself. Like, I took on that harsh voice from my caregiver, and then I internalized it to myself, right? So even when people ask you, like, what is your favorite quality of God, I would say compassion, because that's what in some ways saved my life, like literally, right?
Well, that's really cool. Really cool hearing your upbringing and how that has impacted you. I wanted to kind of like just shift gears a little bit, just because there's often, I guess, stigma or just maybe misconceptions with therapy in religious communities. I don't know. Do you ever see that kind of in your field, or just like with other people that you talk to as a therapist?
Yeah, actually, on the way here, even my I think I can say this. It's not a confidential information, but my my kind taxi driver was asking me what I do for work, and we had this good discussion. And he thought, "Isn't therapy for the weak?" And I thought, "Oh, that's an interesting perspective." I know from friends who are Christians, sometimes they would have that perspective of, well, going to therapy means you don't trust in God enough, or that you're not godly, you're not trusting that God will be faithful. So that's one perspective I do hear from my church friends. But that weak perspective is another one I thought of through this conversation with this taxi driver. I thought, oh, okay, I could see why some people would feel that way. I think I don't hear a lot of maybe the stigma piece as much, because I do see people in counseling.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
work through that barrier to come see me, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of like, and maybe in the church community, usually I would hear people say, or just pray about it, or just trust that God will heal you, which I believe that God heal us. I believe in prayer,
Yeah.
right? I also believe that God can use people and professionals to help us too.
Yeah. I definitely, growing up, what I kind of saw was like, you would only see a therapist if you were clinically depressed or diagnosed with something very, very severe. Otherwise, it's like, why would you go? Like, there's no reason to. It was kind of what I kind of grew up with, and my friends, and probably my crowd. So I think it's definitely changing, which is good. Because I think, when the taxi driver said like therapy's for the weak, well, it's like God's for the the weak too, right? And like when we can admit we are weak, that's when we can get help and be healthy. So that's really interesting. I think what would really be good is for the church to kind of change that. What Joey was saying, like change the narrative a little bit, right? But do you think there's any kind of like practical steps that faith-based settings can kind of change that and change the stigma around mental health?
I think just even having the awareness piece is really good. Like this is a really good start, like having conversations, being more aware of what is mental health. There's a lot of mystery and questions about it. So having these kind of Q&A, having workshops, having more discussions could be a really good start. And even having church leaders to learn more about mental health, that could be really helpful too. I know trainings, depending on what their seminary offered, some people may have a class or a course, or maybe some people have a whole master's in counseling. So I think it can start with the leaders to be more aware and more equipped, and then they can also share those pieces with the congregation. Even just inserting themes of mental health during a service, like what you're doing right now, it's really, really helpful.
Trying.
Yeah, like those are really good start. And then for people to, some churches, again, I find that each church has their own unique needs and gifting. So I wouldn't say this is a one size fits all, but some churches have certain small groups that are focused on certain mental health ideas. So grief groups, addiction groups, or even marriage groups, or groups for moms and dads who are newly parents, like for that mental health support, because there could be a lot of postpartum mood issues, not just for mom, but dads too.
Yeah. Have you seen kind of some churches maybe more on the leading edge of this than you've seen, like, oh, this church, I really think that they're kind of getting it kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I'm seeing more and more churches have, they would hire people come in to do speaking engagements. I think that's a really good start. Again, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, my church is really awesome, but what I
That's good, though.
noticed, yeah, I mean, I also find that my church back home, it's called Cedar View Community Church. They have a pastor just for the mental health area, and they have another pastor just for the care ministry. So there's a lot of resources there to begin with, and we have a specific group for grief and a specific group for addictions, and there's moms groups. I'm sure there are more. Like there's one for elderly, and they have and it's not even just ministry, but in the children side, they have a sensory room for children with special needs. So even just looking into mental health and well-being of children, teens, adults, elderly,
Nice.
that could be really important. Again, at the end of the day, it's more about being attuned to the needs of the church, and care ministry and mental health ministry will be so different at different churches. And it's more about the posture. It's not about doing more things. I know there's already so much that pastors have on their plate, so I don't want to give this impression that they have to do more.
Yeah.
And then, so it's more about that culture of creating a space so that people can feel more seen and heard and connected. And that includes the body of Christ too, right? Not just the leaders.
Yeah. It's like finding that need and addressing it through some help.
It's
really cool. For us, like as we are attenders of church and things like that, and part of the body of Christ, I'm just wondering how we can be maybe more equipped. So like, what are some clear signs that some people may need professional help or to see a therapist if beyond pastoral counseling or small groups and things like that?
Yeah. So one of the major ones that we want to focus on is understanding how well a person is functioning, like day to day. Like, are they able to get out of bed? Are they having trouble going to school? So like day to day functioning, work, school, social relationships. Are they withdrawing themselves from people? For work, are they having concentration issues? For just day-to-day, are they not eating, not sleeping well? Like all those pieces are really important to pay attention to. Like I said earlier, I know pastors have a variety of training. Like some pastors have more training, and so they would be more equipped to support people. But I think in general, maybe my threshold for recommending people to go get help is very low. Like I'm more proactive, definitely. Even for my own physical health, I like to go to physical checkup every year. I like to go to the dentist as checkup, not wait till like my tooth is falling out. Like I'm very proactive. So I think my threshold would probably be like lower in terms of when to get people to seek out. Certainly there are issues that are out of scope like trauma, addiction, abuse. Affair, definitely refer out. Again, I see a lot of couples, and that's an area that I think sometimes they wait a bit too long to go get help, and they may be getting advice that are not helpful. Again, I don't blame pastors. They may not have the expertise, but I think that's the part that we can collaborate to help them to be better equipped so that they know when to refer out.
Well, even not just pastors, I think like just even members, because
exactly.
pastors don't hear everything, right?
Yeah.
So I think even as members, we can be like, oh, I think this person may need some help, so let's try to get them that.
Yeah, and another big thing is obviously if there's risk to self-harm or harming other people, like for sure that needs to be either reported or connected with a therapist and made aware to the leaders too.
So you're saying that you're proactive, like do you yourself see a therapist?
Yeah, so I definitely have and have used therapy techniques to help me grow and heal. And I'm always looking for, okay, I need to always have a backup therapist in case I need help again. And then I would talk to my husband, like, is this a time that we need to go to therapy? Like we would have these conversations. Even though I have a lot of tools, even though in general we have a pretty healthy marriage, but there are times where things could feel stuck.
Yeah.
Right. And then I would also tell him, like, if you need me to help you find someone, I would happy to find you. So I'll give him suggestions too. I mean, it is hard as a therapist to find a therapist who you don't know. But I have definitely reached out, and I always have like a therapist in the back pocket. Like, okay, if I need help, I will go, or if I want to proactively talk about what's going on, like that would be helpful too. So
yeah, I think like myself and my wife is a big advocate for it too, and she's like, everyone should just go see therapists. Do you believe that too?
I actually believe that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I'm like, sure, why not? Like,
I really hope that I really hope that it would feel like, oh, you need a GP, you need a therapist. Like it's the same thing. You know how people feel they don't have any shame to tell, oh, I went to my GP today, or I went to the dentist today. But some people are like, oh, I went to therapy today. Like,
don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone. Or like they'll be like, where are you going? If they're on their way to therapy, they feel kind of ashamed to talk about it. But if they're going to the GP or getting blood work, they just sort of like, oh, I'm getting my blood work done. Right? Like my hope is that people would just say, oh, I'm going to my therapist.
Yeah.
I think some people are starting to feel more comfortable to say that. Sorry, go ahead.
Why do you think that is? Like,
again, I think there's this stigma of, oh, something is wrong.
But like, when you go to your GP, something's wrong. Right? It's like,
yeah.
My spleen's not working. My heart's not.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It seems like a fact type of thing. And
yeah, I think perhaps it's in I don't know if it's like a cultural thing or like, oh, you don't want to talk about your issues. Like perhaps that's from my culture. But that is a good question. I should ask and stay curious to investigate a bit more. Like, how come you feel like you can't tell people?
Yeah.
How come it feels like such a shameful thing?
Yeah. It's interesting.
I think maybe it ties into reputation. Like, oh, like if they know that I'm going to therapy, they may think I'm not cut out for this job, or sometimes that's what I would hear people say too.
Like you're not smart or you're not emotionally healthy.
Or emotionally healthy to perform your work. So I could see that being, because sometimes people would say, are you going to tell my work that I'm here? Like if they're in a certain role or a certain higher up in a company.
Yeah. Well, I know for myself, like when someone talks about therapy, it kind of has like a weight to it almost. Like when they say that they went or they're going to therapy for something, it just feels like, oh, it just kind of got heavy. As members of the congregation, like how can we support others that maybe we know that they're going through something or they're in therapy? Like how can we help support them and maybe not make them feel a certain way or judged or like that?
Similar to what I was saying yesterday, staying very curious, using really inviting language, even saying, hey, have you thought about therapy? Or what do you think about therapy? Or have you been to therapy? If it's okay to ask, like a very inviting and open language. And if they say, oh, I have thought about it, but I don't know, then again, staying curious and ask like, oh, what's stopping you? Or what are you worried about? Or what are some of your fears or hesitation?
Mhm.
And that could be a good start. At the end of the day, people need to feel motivated to go. Like that's more helpful than pushing them to go.
Yeah. But like say they're already there and then we have the conversation around it. Like, is there a posture that we can kind of have to not make them feel judged or like, you know what I mean? Yeah. How do we do that?
I mean, certainly one way to create safety is self-disclosure. Like if you've gone through something that you've gotten help, like that could be helpful to share that piece too. Certainly don't make it about you, but keep it brief. Right? Self-disclosure is a really great way to convey vulnerability and to help them feel safe too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's cool. Thinking about the Christian faith, and you're saying like when you saw your dad and then your mom being a therapist, what are ways that you thought that they've kind of complemented each other, the Christian faith and psychology?
So I maybe just to clarify too, even Christian faith, there's so much to it, like as a really broad term, as well
Yeah.
as psychology. It's even psychology when I was studying back in grad school, they talked about, I'm sure there are more branches now. They talked about there's 12 different branches of psychology therapy approaches to. It's such a broad area. So maybe I'll talk a little bit about my approach to helping clients. So when I help clients, one of the things that I like to do is I start with some of their insecurities or fears or worries. And then we go down, almost like think about it like the elevator, we go down to the next level down to dig deeper, or like peeling the layers of onions, right? We understand like what are some of the, after understanding about their fears and insecurities, what are some of their needs or core needs or core issues? And then we would talk a little bit about, okay, what is the backstory to this? Sometimes I would ask them, okay, let's say if your core issues are not feeling good enough or feeling like you're not lovable or feeling like you're broken, when is the earliest time that you've remember feeling this way? And then we would explore, okay, what are some needs that you may have? And usually it boils down to needing acceptance, love, hope, courage, strength, all those pieces. And I think that's where faith comes in. Like oftentimes I find that to be a point where I can't offer all of that to clients, and faith certainly can offer all those pieces.
Do you find that spirituality has kind of helped you with your own mental health and your own kind of healing process?
Yeah, I think I may have shared this yesterday or maybe 2 days ago. Growing up, I had a really strained relationship with my dad. There was a lot of, I think out of his good heart, he wanted to direct me to a path of studying well. And so I felt like he was really harsh. So there was this like conflict that we had, and I like blocked him out for a really long time. And I would say God has softened me through like his word to help me soften my heart so that I could put the walls down to reconcile with him. And then at the same time, also having interventions to help me heal that younger version of myself, because I was so stuck in that hurt little child. So that's an example of faith and mental health integrating together to help me heal.
Wow, that's really cool. As you think, well, you talked about 12 different, did you say like approaches?
Yeah, I'm sure there are more now. Even I was talking to my mom the other day. I like to talk to her when I prepare for these talks. She's done a lot of this kind of talk.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm sure there are even more now. Yeah.
Do you ever think of any of those? And have you ever come across any that were kind of against scripture or against God? You mentioned a little bit of those ones already, but are there some other approaches that you feel like?
Yeah. I mean, there are ones that I mentioned earlier, but there are ones that maybe they draw from like an energy healing, or again, where like sometimes it's also the intention of how you use an intervention. So I'll give you an example. So meditation is used quite often in therapy, as well as in our faith, like meditating on God's word. But if you think about it, if you meditate with the intention to focus on God, using scripture or having Christian music as a centering, grounding technique, I think that's good. Like that turns you towards God. At the same time, if your meditation is focusing on manifesting yourself to be richer in the future because of love of money, again, nothing wrong with being rich, but
Yeah.
with the love of money, like that is not helpful. Like that, or that, okay, helpful or not helpful, that's not aligning with Christian faith.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess in the secular world, they would say, oh, that's great. You manifest yourself. You imagine yourself getting to your goals. But I think that may clash a bit with the Christian faith because it's not rooted in motivation aligns with furthering his kingdom, but it's rooted in the love for money, right? So I think that may have a bit of a tension. So again, it's even something like this may be, I don't know, controversial, or maybe even for some people they may feel sensitive about, like even yoga. Some people find yoga to be more like a recreational sport. Some people think it's like worshiping, an act of worship. So even those pieces, I think a big part of it's the intention, right?
Yeah. I think as a pastor, I always hear ones like, well, a lot of pastors that get really averse to things like hypnosis or like Reiki. I don't know much about those, but like, do you know much about those?
Yeah, so like even during my grad school time, we learned a bit about hypnosis. The way that they explained to me was that hypnosis was a relaxation of your mind, similar to meditation, but with an element of suggestion. So let's say if someone is trying to stop smoking. So in the hypnosis, like actually what you do in hypnosis is you read a script to them. There's nothing, like I'm not holding this like...
There's no stopwatch? That's all we see in cartoons.
There's none of that. Like literally it's just they give a script to me and I read it. Like we had to practice in class. So I would just read it out loud, and it's really similar to meditation too, but the certain language is a little bit different. It's to relax your mind. So you get into this like really relaxed Zen state. Some people call it like a trance state. Like I said, the whole idea is to help you get to some of your goals. So like stopping smoking, sleeping better. I don't know if people heard of hypnobirthing. So like having less pain during birthing. So it's certainly used in a variety of ways, but I think some people fear that it would like brainwash you, which I can understand. Like okay, at the same time though, therapists, we are under regulations. We have this obligation to do no harm. So like that's important. But are there sketchy therapists? Maybe. I don't know.
Probably.
I don't know. It's again, hypnosis is not something that I practice, and it's not because I think it's like, not godly. It's just not an area that I was drawn to per se.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, they explain it to us in grad school in a sense of it's a relaxation of mind. It's to help suggest to your brain to engage in healthy behaviors. Like that's how they explain to us.
What about Reiki? I don't know what.
To be honest, I don't know too much about it, but from the brief understanding that I have, I think it has to do with some like energy healing, and I think even we talked about like some people may talk about vibrations. I don't know too much. Or like receiving energy from the universe and manifesting yourself out to I don't know. Like I've heard of people talking about it. I think that one I hear more through like maybe the coaching field. But certainly some therapists would integrate yoga into therapy.
So it's almost like there's different approaches, but what are you trying to reach is all kind of more of the bad thing kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think there are actually I think more approaches are likely aligned with the Christian faith. So, for example, there are approaches where they would talk about identifying unhealthy thoughts, or they call it distorted thoughts. And so, in the Bible, we talk about renewing our minds or captivating our minds or like our thoughts.
Yeah,
and that's important.
Okay.
And I think exactly. That's very like 2 Corinthians.
I don't know.
Yeah, like that is quite aligned, right?
Yeah.
And then another area is the narrative, kind of like what Joey was talking about earlier. Maybe growing up, it was challenging, and then you felt like you were this like a victim narrative, but then maybe through Christ, you can rewrite your story. Like there is redemptive factor to it.
Yeah.
And so in that way, it can also be very aligning with our faith. So certainly, I would say more approaches can be aligned than clashing. And another one that you've talked about too, values, right? Like through therapy, you explore more about what your values are, and then you can draw upon from your faith.
Yeah.
And then that helps you, like once you know what your values are, that helps you to make decisions, help guide your actions, right?
Yeah. So what are some of the approaches that you prefer that you like? Not to say the other ones are wrong, but like maybe that you can shed some light so that maybe we can, if we were ever looking for a therapist, be like, oh, they do the same approach that
Yeah,
Clarissa
for
does.
sure. Like I guess I have to make a bit of a disclaimer. I like these approaches not because they're like more aligned with the faith. It's
Yeah,
just personal preference.
That's fine.
Like I like approaches that are more like diving deep into emotions. So I use emotion focused therapy. My mom uses it too. Actually, I was trying to not use it at first because I'm like, I don't want to use what she used. But later I'm like, oh, I really resonate with this approach.
Emotion-focused therapy.
Yeah, emotion focused therapy. And it's really diving into emotions, talking about how all emotions are valid. Some emotions, it's more about what you do about the emotions. Even something like anger, right? Like anger itself, I think a lot of people may think it's like a bad thing. But if anger is using it to assert boundaries, it's actually a good thing. Like we've talked about how like Jesus asserted his boundaries too in the temple, right? But obviously if you use anger to hurt someone, then that's not a helpful thing. So it's less so about what kind of emotions are coming up, but more so what is the emotion telling you? Like you seeing it as a signal, right? Like that's helpful. Even emotions that in the Bible, it's not as popular, like jealousy or like just something that's not as encouraged, or like they're trying to say like move away from these feelings. But again, it's like, what is the jealousy about? Is it about hurt? Is it about disappointment, right?
Yeah. As I've kind of processed that, I've kind of realized not to suppress those emotions, but to recognize them, because we're all human, right? It's like, if you suppress it, it's going to get bigger in a sense. And if you fight it, it's just going to get bigger and bigger. And you're going to continue to think about it more and more and more. But in therapy, they talk about how you recognize it, you see it there, and then you release it if it doesn't align with your values. And I was like, whoa, that's like actually what we should do, biblically too.
Yeah.
Forgive ourselves, know that we're human, but then turn toward Christ and move on. In a sense, yeah.
Yeah, normalizing that we do have a sinful nature. We do have these feelings. And I think even your approach, the approach that you've been learning is slightly different from my approach. So the way that we call it is the only way out is through. So we have to even go through the feeling to get out of it. But again, no right or wrong. It's just different. Some approaches people resonate more with. So some people even would say, oh, I'm going to mentally put it in a box and put it away. Or like I'm going to mentally fly it out like a bird, then it's not coming back again. So it's just like different approaches to address the same thing.
Yeah. So emotion-focused therapy, are there other approaches that you would recommend or that you think?
Like again, this is more of a personal preference. I really like Gottman therapy for marriages just because, so the way that Gottman started was they first studied healthy and unhealthy couples and wanted to learn what were some of the trends and what were some of the patterns. And I thought that was really neat. I mean, the original people who started them, they're Jewish, so it's not like Christian founders. So that's why the even yesterday, some of the topics is called like Four Horsemen, because then they draw it from like their faith too, like some of the terms. But again, right, like it's more so from that perspective for Gottman, I liked it because I like that they draw it on almost like positive psychology. They looked at what worked for people, and then they try to get people to do more of it, right? So that's why I like it. And it's very practical. I work with a lot of parents with kids. They don't have time to sit to talk through their problems for hours and hours. So it's important to talk through issues, but practical skills are really helpful because they just don't have a lot of time and mental space to do that.
If you were to help someone and they were looking for a psychologist, but they never had one before, how would you kind of help them and guide them through that? So
finding a psychologist in some ways is similar to finding a specialized doctor, or like, you go to a GP and they would refer you out to someone who's more specialized. So not all psychologists work with all issues under the sun, right? So it's in some ways, it is helpful to find someone who is trained in a certain area and has experience helping them. So if you are looking for support for a postpartum mood issue, you do want to find someone who has training with those areas and who has experience helping this population. Like that's really important. And I always tell people, other than experience and training, the relationship that you have with the therapist is actually very important. One of the most important factor. Because I know sometimes people ask, like, should I find a Christian? Should I find someone who has lived experience? So meaning like, let's say if I have like stress because of postpartum, should I find someone who also had postpartum stress or postpartum anxiety? I would say it's not a must, but if that helps you feel more connected with them, that could be a good factor. Sometimes people like to find a therapist who has a similar cultural background or faith background. Like all those are good things to consider, but I would say it's not a must. At the end of the day, it's more about the training, the expertise, and also how well you feel like you connect with them. So even doing a 15-minute intro call could be really helpful. You get almost like a quick speed date, like, oh, do we vibe?
Yeah.
Like that could be a good way to go. Yeah. You can read their profile. Sometimes people have social media. Sometimes you can watch videos of them or just like learn more about them through the intro call could be helpful.
What should that kind of relationship look like?
That relationship should look like someone that you can feel comfortable enough to share and open up. Because if you feel like if you don't feel safe enough to share with your therapist, you're not going to get to places that are really deep. It's just going to stay super superficial. So someone that you can feel like, oh, okay, I could see myself like putting my walls just a little bit down, just to share a little bit to start. Like I think that like at least you have a good vibe.
Yeah.
Like, kind of like when you're meeting a friend or like I don't know, when you're trying to find a partner or a spouse, like you need to have that, like you need to have that connection too, right? And sometimes it does take like 4 sessions or a few sessions to get to know them. So even if on the first session you're like, oh, I don't know, but of course if you're like, nope, definitely not, like I think you'll know.
Oh, okay. So I've just heard of some people who have had sessions and they haven't gone so well. Like maybe one where it's like they just talked the whole time, like the therapist talked the whole time.
Yeah.
Another time where the client talked the whole time, but then there was nothing kind of like, there's no help necessarily. Just kind of like, oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. It is. I think that interesting enough, what sometimes someone perceives as what's happening in the session could be also different from what actually happens. Again, not to say that, it was or wasn't true, but that's also something to consider. And then also understanding that some therapists, they may go with a more, like if the one that maybe talk more may be more like psychoeducational. They may use a route approach that is like more like teaching you concepts about trauma, like helping you understand and have more awareness. But certainly if they're talking the whole time, like that's not a good sign. Because it's not about them.
Right, yeah. Okay.
And for the ones maybe they felt like they talked a lot and the other therapist didn't give much input, again, it's hard to know without being there. So I don't want to automatically say that was a bad therapist. Again, I work with couples. You only hear one side of the story. You don't know the full story, right? You got to be very mindful. Sometimes certain therapists, we have what we call like a person-centered approach where they do want to hear more from them because they see the client as the expert. They do want to give them the space to talk. They see that as part of the therapy part.
Yeah.
So sometimes that is the therapy approach. So you may want to ask the therapist, what is your approach? How do you conduct your sessions?
Yeah.
And like for me, I'm also very much goal oriented. Like I ask clients, like, what are your goals? What do you want to, like I always ask them, if you go to couples therapy, you come out of it, you feel like that was so worth my time and money and energy. What would that look like? Like I'm very much like goal oriented. I don't rush people through it. So you can ask them, like, what is your approach? How do you know a client's getting better? How do you start your sessions? How do you wrap it up? Do you give me resources in between? Like those are good questions to ask too. Like I would prepare my sessions ahead of time, look through all my notes, and I would start off by saying, I prepared the sessions, but I want to check in with you. What's on your mind? Do you want to talk about things that we left off last week, or are there new things? Sometimes they've just fought, so they want to process the fight.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're like, no, we want to talk about what we left off from last week, right? So.
No, that's really good. So at this point, I took some questions from the audience, and the first question was about couples therapy, and he asked, do you see couples apart from each other or together? What does that look like?
Good question. So the way that couples therapy, or at least the way that I approach is, usually the first session I see them together. A few things. I like to observe how they talk to each other, their body language, how are they interrupting each other? Is one person sort of like sitting away? Are they engaged? What is it like when they hear their partner talk about them? I'm watching all that. So it's really helpful for me to observe. During the first session, I try to understand what are some of your current issues? When did it start? What's the history of your relationship? Like those pieces. And then the second, third session is when I get to know them each individually. I would meet with them individually. Now, I tell them there's a no secret policy because I'm not keeping any secrets. It's different if someone says like, oh, they're hurting me, I need to leave, then that's different for safety. But in general, I have a no secret policy. So the individual session is when I would assess safety, like personal safety. Like, do you have any self-harm tendency? Are you trying to hurt other people? I want to get to know their perspective because sometimes I may ask the same question. What challenges are you having in your marriage right now, right? Sometimes they may add more details when it's one-on-one because they feel safer without the other person being there. It's also helpful for me to understand about their childhood and upbringing or previous relationships because sometimes our previous relationships, our relationship with our parents, change the way that or inform the way that we relate to our spouse. Right? Sometimes we would say, oh, like growing up, I really didn't like how my parents interacted. I don't want to ever be like that. So this is why I do this. Or growing up, I really like how my dad was so attentive. So I want to offer the same to my spouse. Or growing up, I feel so abandoned. So even though I'm stuck in this relationship, I don't want to abandon them because I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be my parent who abandoned me. So I get a lot of backstory. Safety, like I talked about in the relationship too. Like I'll explore those pieces. And I also understand like what's making you want to stay in this relationship. Like help me understand like those pieces too, like cost benefits. And then I ask about like a bit about their faith, their culture, their values, because sometimes that changes things too, right? Like people may really value education. That's why they keep clashing about parenting. Or maybe they really value giving their kids autonomy, but the other person is like, chill, like I just want like to, or like maybe one is really about autonomy, like giving the kids autonomy. The other one's like, nope, like this is what I say they need to do. So that's why they're clashing. So just understanding individually who they are. And then on the fourth session, that's when I bring them all together. I give them a treatment plan, what I observe, and then we start diving into each of their goals. Because again, I have to balance it, right? Like the relationship is my client. It's not one or the other. It's both of them. Sometimes I do recommend them to individually seek help because sometimes maybe their own trauma is interacting or interrupting their relationship. Maybe one person is like highly anxious and so they feel the need to like micromanage their partner. So they need to work on their anxiety individually with another therapist. And I would also collaborate with that therapist if it's appropriate. Then we can inform each other because that individual therapist may only hear like parts of it, right? Like all they may hear is like, oh, my spouse is lazy. They don't do this. They don't do that. But maybe their standards are so high. It's like, well, that's, or maybe they're really struggling with certain mental health issues. So that changes the way that they're seeing the world or seeing themselves. So
the second question was surrounding this area about the ministry that we do at times where we break off into small groups and we go through some of the deeper things of the soul or the emotions. And we might discuss things like grief, or woundedness or unforgiveness, some of these maybe hurtful memories that might be brought up again. And when we do that, as members of the congregation, we don't have the expertise and there's no confidentiality. The question was, are we maybe doing more harm than good?
Again, my threshold is so low. Like I'm usually like, maybe have a supervising therapist there. I know it's challenging. I think the piece that I'm more thinking about is for the listeners. Like, how are you dealing with listening to other people's issues when you're not really sure if you're carrying or not carrying their trauma onto you? Because that could have some like vicarious trauma or like you're even witnessing other people or hearing about other people's trauma. It can impact you. So that's even one first part. Yeah, like I'm very much... Yeah. My threshold is so low. I'm
Makes
usually
sense,
like,
too.
hey, I would love to help. Like if someone is helping marriage ministry, like these are some things to consider. These are some things that to maybe wait till is more professional. I get it though, in a sense that there is so much need and sometimes people are not ready to go to therapy or like resources is limited. So it is challenging in that sense. Yeah, I think it would also... the other part is also understanding, like, how do you even assess the risk there? Because people are not trained. Again, I don't want to dismiss the value of it. I'm just saying it is a really good area that could collaborate with professionals. Like in some ways, I wish that people see mental health as more physical health. Like no one's going to try to go work on someone's teeth and be like, I hope this is going to work. I'm going to try to work on their teeth, or like, I'm going to try to give them surgery.
Yeah.
Like they refer them out right away, right? Maybe they would listen to them and be like, oh, that must hurt a lot. Your teeth hurts a lot. Or like, that must be really challenging going through like physical treatment, or like if you broke your leg or something. But I don't think anyone's going to try to help them like physically. Whereas somehow like for emotional support, people like try to help them more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think if peers are trained and guided, like even I talked about how there's a ministry called Hope Made Strong, like it's started by a social worker, like it's a Christian organization. They do train peers to be better listener, to better support each other's mental health. So there are training out there that people can do, but they also know at what point do you need to refer out or get other support, right?
So like maybe what are some of those dangers for someone, say someone's in a group of two and one person just dumps like so much emotional baggage and trauma stuff, history onto that person listening. What,
for the listener?
Is there some things that the listener can do to be like, okay, I need help to not for it to be dangerous kind of thing?
For the speaker, for the listener?
The listener.
Like for them. So they need to find someone to debrief it. Like they need probably a therapist to help them.
Okay.
And go through that. And then especially when we're talking about trauma, if trauma is not handled well, you may re-traumatize them. Like I don't work, like trauma isn't necessarily an area that I work with specifically, but there are, like I have done trauma training because working with couples, you are going to bound to run into trauma, but I wouldn't call myself a trauma specialist, right? So, but even when I work with couples, like affair recovery, that is a very traumatic experience for the partner who the other, like for the hurt partner they call, right? And so even those pieces, there are questions that I encourage them to talk about. There are questions that we would stay away so we don't re-traumatize them, right? So even when we are having a safe space to talk about trauma or challenging emotions, we want to make sure we're not opening and hurting them again, because that could bring harm.
Yeah. Well, because me as a pastor, there's a lot of people who confess things and tell things to me. Do I just go to a therapist and be like, hey man, all these people said all this stuff to me. Help me. Is that kind of like what
I think maybe for you as the listener, paying attention, like are you having nightmares of what other people's were like?
Not yet.
Impact? Right? Like it may impact your concentration, it may impact your sleep. You may start to feel like we talked about compassion fatigue. You may have less compassion for them. Like if to you you're like, just another traumatic issue. It's like, whoa, like pay attention to that, right? So that's something to really be mindful of. I mean, there are always risks. Even for me, there's risks to see clients, but it's more about do you have support? Do you have anyone to go debrief? Or if there's a crisis happening, can you go to someone to let them know, right?
Yeah, well, that's really good. The next question was about how to deal with parents who don't believe in therapy and may think that something is wrong with you if you do actually pursue therapy. Yeah.
So I get a couple things. You can try to educate them and help them be more aware, because that question or that response from the parents, it's there's some clues for me that maybe they're not aware, maybe their mindset isn't like up to date with like what therapy really is about. So even just having the understanding of like, oh, okay, like I kind of anticipated they may say that. And then also perhaps even grieving the fact that, I didn't get the response that my parents, like I didn't get the response that I was hoping for from my parents, right? Like that's also a part too. Like you can make an attempt to educate them, but you may also want to be mindful that it may not change your mind, like any other issues beyond mental health. Maybe there are other issues in your relationship that you may not see eye to eye. And that then you have to ask yourself, what was I hoping they would say? And now that I got a response that I didn't really appreciate, or now that I feel like my feelings are dismissed, what am I going to do about that? Like there's also a lot of different pieces. And ultimately, we can't really change other people's minds. We can only manage our own feelings of disappointment or feelings of this and that, right? So like there's so much, it's like a question, but it's like there's so many layers to it, right? Yeah. Because the same thing, right? Like I help with couples, it's not like we're asking people to change their mother-in-law, father-in-law's mind. Like sometimes you can't. Then it's more about how do you support each other and be like, hey, that was really hard what your mom said to you or what your dad said to you. Like that's more what we're trying to work on versus like, what are we going to do to go change their mind? Because you may not be able to. You can try, but you may not be able to.
So this next one wasn't really a question, but more of a sharing of how being from the baby boomer generation, there wasn't this language and tools around mental health about having safe space or being traumatized or experiencing trauma. And they just lived their life and they tried to get by with what they had. Now with the younger generation and how they do have more tools and understanding and language around it, they would just appreciate it if the younger generation were able to look at the older generation with more empathy and understanding.
Yeah, I think first of all, I appreciate you for sharing this, because even sharing it here is quite vulnerable. So I want to thank you for doing that. I think maybe what I'm hearing you say is that maybe applause there.
Baby boomers.
I think maybe what I'm hearing is that I know that you need to be seen and heard, but I also want to feel seen and heard. And it's navigating that transition from I am your parent and you used to be little, now you're an adult child. And like that dynamic is also different, because typically what we expect of parents is that they're wiser, they're bigger, and that is an expectation, and that's a fair expectation, right? So I love that you're saying maybe there is a need to have this generation come in and we all talk about it together in that healing way. Like I think that's like this is the space now where we're hearing the need, right? Like I think that's a need that we just heard too.
That's good. And we have a supervising therapist here to make sure we're okay. Well, I think our hour is up.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. But actually, though, thank you guys for just being willing to be here and to listen. Thank you, Clarissa, for coming. It's an honor for us to just have you here. It's cool that we kind of dreamt this up like a year ago and God made it happen. And Supper Club made it happen. Supper Club helped flyer here, helped pay for the hotel, all that kind of stuff. So we're thankful that, we can be advocates for mental health and for it to help us in our faith. Just a little token from us is a shirt from Supper Club.
Thank you.
It's Communion is Life. One of
it's cute.
our friends who's an artist made this, the design. So
who made it?
It's a friend named Jeff Tell.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, can we thank Clarissa for coming?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for coming.